Hi, I'm Peter Bart.
And I'm Peter Guber, and this is Shootout. You know, when you're in the business like we are for a long period of time, Steven Spielberg is a kind of a touchstone all through our own careers and careers of so many other folks that intersect with him. You're either mentored by him, you're admired by him, or he's admiring you, or you're looking at his films. And that idea that all these paths cross makes the process so rich.
Well, in so many ways, he's been a lightning rod, both as the head of a studio, really, as well as a filmmaker. So let's pick up the discussion, okay?
Great. Welcome.
How are you? Morning. Oh, good morning.
You?
Good morning.
You're a master filmmaker. You've absolutely capstoned the blockbuster. You're seminal in every single decade with the films you made, and they're bigger and bigger films. Would you ever, seeing what's going on in the marketplace, go back and make a really small film where it challenged not only your creative juices, but your economic juices? The cost of the film was very small.
Well, you know, I was actually, when I was developing Memoirs of a Geisha to direct, I was going to make it for $10 million, all in Japanese subtitled. And nobody wanted to make that movie, even with me. Basically, you're pushing me into a fantasy that I have, which was, I would love to go off and make a picture like Capote. Right. I would love to go off and do a picture like George Clooney did with, you know, Good Night, Good Luck. You know, I mean, this is my current 21st century fantasy, is to be able to do that. And if I have to go to Romania, where Francis wanted to go to make to depart Hollywood to make an independent movie, I'd love to do that someday.
Pete and I both have heard from studios that the parade of filmmakers submitting things, they all want to basically remake early Spielberg. They want to go for the top commercially.
Well, you know, that's why I think, and I agree, I see a lot of things that are almost imitations of the tentpole movies of the 70s and 80s. I see a lot of scripts coming down the pike like that. But I also see just as many scripts coming to the smaller distribution entities like Lionsgate and like Focus and like New Line and Fox 2000 that are truly inspirational, you know, pieces. And they're not vanity films. These are real strong films with a philosophical point of view, a personal point of view, and that's why it almost feels like India, where there's no middle class. You know, we have the upper crust, upper echelon, hugely expensive tentpole movies, and then there's no middle class, and then we have the little small independent pictures.
No more tweeners.
There's no more tweeners, because it's really philosophically tough to make a film that's $45 million budget. You can really get hurt with a $45 million budget. Funny enough, you can get less hurt when the film either costs $150 million or $12 million.
But DreamWorks does not have an art house division.
Well, we do now. We basically moved into John Lesher's Paramount Classics territory, and John Lesher is going to be distributing a number of the films that I always wanted to make at DreamWorks. For instance, American Beauty, which we made at DreamWorks, which we made for, I think, $14 million. If we make a movie like that today, that movie will be distributed. It'll be a DreamWorks picture distributed through Paramount Classics. And that way, the agents will understand that it's a Paramount Classic release, and they won't ask for $20 million for their lead actor, and that actor may take a risk and do it for nothing.
Going back to the 70s experience of filmmaking, though, when you did go to see a movie on a weekend, every movie was so different from every other movie. The experience was so disparate. And I noticed, as you choose your subjects over the years, you hold that 70s habit in the sense that your choices are never predictable. Do you intentionally, instinctually go from one subject matter, one genre to another?
Well, you've written brilliantly about that. You really have, because I've read a lot of the things that you've written about celebrating the eclecticness of, you know, filmmakers. That it's nice to remember David Lean saying at his AFI dinner, he said, you know, that he was told by Noel Coward that a picture maker or an author should never come out of the same hole. And David had made a concerted effort not to repeat himself, not to try to copy himself, and he kind of gave that advice to all of us in the room. And I've kind of, you know, even before David gave that advice to Hollywood, I kind of always thought that was something that I didn't want to do, except where it's a sequel. Yeah. You know, I've always been interested in finding something to keep me interested. Yeah. I could make the same movie over and over again. I could just do alien movies the rest of my life, and I would do fine. But it wouldn't be really interesting. It would be a less interesting career for me to do that than it would to come out, you know, with something like Munich after something like War of the Worlds. Because I like the kind of whiplash of subject matter, you know, changing so radically.
But I had also had a conversation with Lean, who I worked with, and who said he was always found something that had to inspire him from his own life to do a film. And actually, I read somewhere that several of your films were inspired. You did it for your father, Saving Private Ryan,
yes,
and Schindler's List for your children, and several other films that you had an inspirational reason to do it. Is that an important ingredient in why you do a film?
Well, I've never made a movie because I thought it was the right movie to make. I've always made my choices based on something I deeply felt was the time was right for me to make. So I've never imposed any kind of a career planning intellectual exercise. It's always been, you know, what do I want to spend the next 2 years of my life on? And that's an emotional commitment. I can never make a cerebral commitment about that. So Private Ryan, you know, had an emotional resonance for me because my father had told me about his wartime experiences my entire life, and I was very respectful of the greatest generation, as Tom Brokaw coined one day. And I made that picture clearly for my dad. But there's other pictures that are insignificant in terms of the way people look at my movies, but they were significant for me. And they've all had there's always been an emotional reason to make a movie, whether it was a failure or a success. There was something kind of, for me, important to say when I needed to say it.
You've done television, you've done movies, you've done every kind of, you've done cable movies, won every award. How come you haven't really done Broadway?
Wow. Wow. That's pretty good. That's a good question. I did my first live show. The first live thing I ever did was I conceived and produced the 2000 Millennium half hour for CBS. Do you know the half hour where John Williams actually live with his own music scored a half-hour documentary celebrating the 20th century? That was the first live thing I was ever really involved in. I got very excited about doing that. But Broadway is another matter. You know, I think we're going to be doing mixed media, multimedia innovations in 2008. We've got ideas where the technology hasn't even been invented to pull off the idea yet. We're hoping somebody will come along and show us how to do these visual concepts by 2008. But Broadway's another matter, and I'm a much better patron of the arts than I am a Broadway impresario.
When David Geffen told me he wrote that check for Cats, he said to himself the minute he wrote the check, so why the hell did I write that check for Cats?
He's really happy he wrote that check.
$30 million later.
Exactly. When I get asked a question about what did this movie mean, and when I give an answer, my answer tends to be everybody else's answer. It supersedes the opinion of people in the audience and people who write about films, and they tend to have heard what I thought about the movie, and that tends to be what they think about the movie.
Very first light, Chief. Sharks come cruising. The shark, he's got lifeless eyes, like a doll's eyes. Doesn't seem to be living until he bites you. Those black eyes roll over white, and the ocean turns red and rip you to pieces.
Yeah, no, I gotta go. Yeah, I'm getting on.
I totally spaced on that one.
That was bad.
Let's just use your Capital One no-hassle card.
Protect yourself with Capital One's low rates and great rewards.
You are such a persuasive and articulate person, but after Munich, you decided that you wouldn't go out and discuss it a great deal. Do you think that decision was a prudent one in retrospect?
Before release.
Before release, yeah. Yeah, because I talked about it a lot after release. I do think it was, because I have over 3 decades of experience with the process of filmmaking, and then going out there and standing up for yourself, you know, and sort of fronting yourself. And I've had 30 years experience doing that. And I have found pretty much over those 3 decades that when I get asked a question about what did this movie mean, and when I give an answer, my answer tends to be everybody else's answer. It supersedes the opinion of people in the audience and people who write about films, and they tend to have heard what I thought about the movie, and that tends to be what they think about the movie. And in this case, I wanted the film to speak volumes, and I wanted myself to shut up. It might have hurt me in the long run, but I don't think it really hurt the film that much. I thought it was really, really important for people to be pulled into this discussion and to draw their own conclusions and start discussing or arguing, if you will, with each other about what we had put up there on the screen without me giving all the easy answers. Philosophically, geopolitically, I wanted to stay out of it until the film had a chance to be seen by as many people as possible, and then I began doing interviews.
But the films of advocacy, like, say, Costa Gavras used to make, those were clearer to the audience in a way, because, you know, this was the position that the picture was taking. To a degree, there was more ambiguity in Munich.
Yes.
It asked a question, it didn't give you an answer.
That's
right.
What
the film
the
did.
whole movie is a series of questions, and it's like any good yeshiva, where I was taught in Hebrew school early on to ask questions, to listen and to ask questions, and to not just stand up and preach. This is my Jewish upbringing. And the film, and this is Tony Kushner's upbringing, and the film, I think, is very reflective of the Jewish experience of asking questions, listening for answers, and getting into heated discussion. And that's pretty much the mission that was accomplished with Munich.
You certainly created the controversy. You certainly created the dialogue. I wonder, in retrospect, though, from a pure marketing point of view, was the release, without that foreplay, so to speak,
Right.
was the release date of right at Christmas the most propitious time to bring that film out? Would it have been better in October?
Peter, I was still shooting in October.
Well, then you couldn't release it. What, would you have thought about moving it into the next year?
No, because I knew I could finish the picture and have it out by Christmas, and I wanted the film to come out at Christmas time because I thought that the world had reached, and especially the Middle East, was nearing a critical crossroad. And by the way, history now bears that decision out with what happened, especially with the Hamas, you know, dominating the elections recently. And so I worked really hard to get it out before the end of the year.
But you have been so productive, even in recent years. Do you ever say to yourself, I wish I'd thought about this schedule different, that I could have given myself more time to edit, more time to test the picture?
Well, number one, you know, I don't know if
Not
we've
this
talked
picture,
about this
but I
before,
mean-
but I don't test very many of my pictures. The ones I direct, I mean, I certainly, you know, love seeing the test results of the films that DreamWorks makes, but the films that I personally direct, I haven't tested a movie in 10 years.
Why
really
is that?
haven't. Because I haven't made a comedy. And the greatest, and I haven't made a movie that's a deep mystery, and I think comedies and mysteries need to be tested, because with a mystery, you want to make sure you haven't left the audience, you know, too far behind in the dark, and with a comedy, you want to make sure it's funny.
That's right.
But the kinds of movies I've been making, I have not felt that the sneak preview, which is never a fair sneak preview because it's blogged on the internet,
Right.
no matter where you go, it doesn't matter. We haven't yet found a town that is off the map and off the charts where somebody doesn't get onto the blogs and send their reviews to Ain't It Cool News.
With the internet, there's no off the chart anymore. It's right in the center.
So the whole idea and concept that a filmmaker should be allowed to have a work in progress, you're judged the second you look to an audience to aid you in making creative decisions. You're immediately judged, and at least for them, that's the finished picture. And that's where the communication era is kind of unfair to this industry.
But at the same time, isn't the pressure of 150, 160, a $200 million, which we're seeing being made now, over $200 million film, isn't that another kind of pressure? Doesn't that create a kind of anxiety that doesn't allow the film to find itself?
I don't know if $200 million doesn't allow the film to find itself, but it certainly can end a career overnight after the first 3 days. You know, and that's what's scary, I think, for a new filmmaker that perhaps acquitted himself, you know, in some other medium and got a lot of good press, and then gets his first movie and the budget goes from 150 to 175 million dollars. You've got to really start to worry, because you've got to hope that movie's going to make all its money back in 10 days. And that's the pressure that I don't wish on anybody. And yet we're in a situation now with digital cinema. where digital cinema costs a lot of money to generate these amazing effect shots, even amazing digital characters. And it is raising not just the bar, but it's raising the bar that Hollywood, you know, fears and yet is devoted to, which is, you know, how much is enough? How high is enough to, you know, to basically say, I'm not going to, you know, green light a movie that costs $250 million.
But you think you see a film that comes out, Tom Cruise's film comes out and does $50 million in the opening weekend. If somebody said that to you a few years ago, that was not the greatest result in the world, you'd be shocked. Isn't it managing expectations as much as budgets?
Managing corporate expectations.
Yes, right.
You know, I think when Jurassic Park 3 came out, we got a lot of flack because the film opened basically as well as Jurassic Park 1. The first Jurassic Park did 50 in 3 days, went on to do something like, what was it, 350 domestically. Jurassic Park 2 came out, which I did, The Lost World, and set a record in those days, like over 90 for the weekend. But then when Jurassic Park 3 fell down from 90 to 50, everybody said, well, it's over, and yet we did basically $200 million domestically. We did really good with that movie, so I don't rule out anybody who opens to $47 to $50 million because that simply means Mission 3 is such a good movie. I saw it a couple weeks ago. It's such a beautifully crafted and energetic experience that if it just manages to hold on, it's going to do fine for Paramount.
This AMC presentation is brought to you in part by Capital One. What's in your wallet? Coming up next, Robert Newton, who plays the drunken private Tom, was infamous for showing up to work intoxicated. The Desert Rats, next.
On the next all-new episode of Hustle,
I'm issuing you a challenge. Okay.
a legendary grifter defends his rep
Let's see where the dice fall.
in a game of cons and marks.
Go! This time, I've got you beat. It's not where you start, Danny, it's where you finish. I'm a policeman.
An all-new con is on.
Mickey's in jail.
Doesn't want to play fair? That's fine by me.
The AMC original series,
Do I have to prove myself to you too?
Hustle, an all-new episode, premieres Wednesday night at 10, 9 Central. The con is on AMC.
As you can see on my chart here, sales have exceeded...
What is that? Small business owner. They come in looking for loans. But we only care about big business.
Quarter. Our cash... Whoa. Our cash...
Do they normally catch on fire like that? Yeah, let's get some lunch.
Does your bank think small about your small business? Call Capital One instead for no-hassle business loans, lines of credit, and credit cards.
Hello, Capital One?
What's in your wallet? Oh, I want a loan. I want a loan.
Your risks can change quickly. Make sure your insurance stays in sync. Travelers.
Prepare to enter the atmosphere. Okay, we have parachute online. I have a picture right now.
Now, if there is life, the Dutch will find it.
What is he doing? What is that?
Now we wait.
Still working on your chip shot, George?
Wheat Thins toasted chips, not fried like regular potato chips.
Wheat Thins toasted chips. Great taste, less fat.
And believe me, George knows toasted.
You are gonna love this. Come here. Wow.
Three Musketeers. Light, fluffy chocolate with 45% less fat.
Don't even think about it.
Also available in minis.
In the DreamWorks experience, with its very elaborate plans, two questions. Number one, did you feel that trying to manage an active studio was a distraction at times from your own filmmaking career? And secondly, during its early years, DreamWorks did run a bit. It didn't have a clear policy. Its own plan wavered a great deal. Was that frustrating to you?
I think what was frustrating was that people didn't have the patience to give me a chance, after I stated it in 2 press conferences, that I needed to, before I could make a film for DreamWorks, I had obligations to other studios to finish films that were actively in pre-production and on the drawing board, and before I could really start to work for my own company, I had to fulfill obligations to Warner Brothers and to Universal.
Right.
And I don't think people clearly understood that. They thought we would come out of the gate within 6 months of the announcement with our first DreamWorks movie, and I was as clear as I possibly could be in a press conference to say that wasn't going to happen. So people were impatient with my patience, and with, I think, our patience. But I knew that we would eventually succeed, and I knew that we would eventually make movies that would be important contributions to Hollywood filmmaking, and that took a couple of years, but eventually started to happen.
But do you think that managing the creative enterprise, as opposed to your own directorial efforts, your own filmmaking efforts, deflects some of the precious bodily fluids, so to speak, you know, into other areas that take away from the magic of your own films?
I knew that if I was really going to front DreamWorks, not just with my name, but with my efforts, I was going to have to make a big compromise and find whole years where I didn't direct. And there were whole years I didn't direct. You know, there were, after Saving Private Ryan, I devoted 3 years to the company, didn't direct a picture for 3 years after Ryan, and didn't direct a picture for 3 years after Schindler's List. And so I was actively producing at that time for Universal. So what I did was I relegated a lot of my, you know, time to Walter Parks and Laurie McDonald, and they put together a tremendous creative team. Walter Parks represented a creative entity, a writer-producer who is now going to run a studio, which, by the way, I recommend to any studio. You should have writers and producers who understand directors and other writers and other producers actively figuring out how to chart a creative course. So that Walter and Laurie stepping into those positions gave me a chance to direct. So I could both produce at DreamWorks, and when I felt the urge to direct and found something that inspired me, I could then go away for 6 months, 7 months, direct a picture, and feel safe that 2 very talented people were actively running DreamWorks.
You're going to direct or co-direct with a Chinese director the Olympics opening and closing ceremonies.
I'm not really co-directing it. The director, you know, Yimu Zhang, is going to. He's the director. I'm going to be the overseas cultural artistic advisor to him and to his team. He asked me to join his team 2 years ago, and we concocted a really great concept for an opening and closing ceremony. And we went into a competition with 15 other teams, and our team was selected.
I wonder why.
But Imu's going to be he's going to be the director of it, and I'm going to be his consultant.
He's a brilliant guy.
Raise the Red Lantern. He's a brilliant filmmaker.
Does it bother you that you know there's so many moviegoers out there who are saying, why won't he make us another E.T.? You know, people want you to return to your roots, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to.
Well, the aliens wanted Woody Allen to return and make those, you know, earlier, funnier films. You remember in Stardust Memories. And I often feel like Woody Allen at the film festival when the aliens came down and said, we prefer your funnier, earlier films. But at the same time, you know, I think in the 70s and 80s, I liked doing that. I liked telling stories that first meant something to me, and then number 2 happened to reach more people than an art house crowd. And I really, at the same time, I don't think, except for the sequels of Indiana Jones and Jurassic Park, I haven't been really drawn into, you know, going out and just making crowd pleasers for the sake of, you know, the fun of the audience. It was more fun for me to feel the audience when I was directing my movies and do things for them. I would consciously say, how will the audience react if we do this? I wonder what the audience will think if we do that. And as I got older, I began to do that less and more, thinking about, you know, that aesthetic distance between the audience and the filmmaker began to really, you know, shorten as I got older. And I don't know why. I can't tell you I've psyched myself out and can give you a good answer. But I've been a little more selfish in the last 15 years with my career, I think.
As you get older, I think the time is more valuable to you. You realize it's a much more scarce resource than the money or even the people around you. It's yourself. So when you dedicate yourself to a film now, you're taking a year or 2 of your life, which is a precious resource. So now, when you look at go back 17 years later and do Indiana Jones.
Oh yeah, well I mean back then.
Right, back then.
Yeah.
Right. So, what compelled you to go back and do it again now, many years later?
Well, you know, I just thought it was interesting because, in this sense, because Indiana Jones is not a sequel, it's a continuing adventure, and because each adventure is a self-contained story, and the only thing is the style and the central character carries you through from one to the next. It feels more like an anthology series than it does a television episodic series. So for me, every Indiana Jones movie is an opportunity just to go out and have a lot of fun and cook up some new adventures, and so the audience in me, you know, I want to be entertained by that character again, and I want to find a way back into that genre.
But can a franchise or a tentpole, Superman, Batman, all these films, can they run out of steam?
Of course they can. Anything can run out of steam, but it's not up to us to decide whether it run out. The audience tells us that your franchise has run out of steam. That's not up to us to say.
Well, I know you'll be inspiring directly a lot of filmmakers, but over the years you've inspired a lot of wannabe filmmakers as well, and it's great to talk to you about all that. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. It's great to be here and to talk to you guys like this.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Always. I mean, so many of the films you made. I mean, I must have seen Empire of the Sun at least 4 times. And I loved it.
Thank you. But I love the idea of going to Gooper's office. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Did you make everyone's deal too?
Do you know about this? He did this.
I didn't know that.
He held court for all these young filmmakers, and he gave us nothing but great advice. You did this, and Vernon Zimmerman was there, and I was there, Monty Hellman, and we used to hang around with you sitting there, and a lot of us weren't working. I mean, Vernon wasn't, I wasn't. A lot of us weren't even being considered for work. But you opened your doors to...
He was always a teacher.
You know,
he was a teacher. On the other hand, whenever I got a job, he always called me to tell me what my exit deal was.
You know...